I have noticed in my friend groups, in group chats, in my clients, and a growing number of women online that a lot of them are starting to say the quiet part out loud. I love my children, but I do not love parenting. I do not love the work that is required to take care of them. And a lot of them, as soon as they say that out loud, are immediately judged. Well, you shouldn't have had them. I would be so upset if I saw my mom write this. And, you're just so selfish. And, a child is a blessing and you should be so grateful. And the judgment is coming from this idea that once a woman becomes a mother, her personhood disappears, that her being viewed or valued as a person separate and apart from her role as a mother is completely irrelevant, that her value is measured through the metric of her role as a mother and the extent to which she is a good caregiver or nurturer for her children. And so her personhood basically takes a backseat to motherhood. Better yet, if a woman decides to remain child-free, she is also judged. She is selfish. Even the vice president of these yet-to-be United States has said publicly that any woman that does not have children does not have a vested interest in the future of the country. So in this video, we are going to unpack some of the things that people don't consider when they become a mother and why we shouldn't be so quick to judge. Keep watching. Hi, I'm Dr. Shantae, and what I do on my YouTube channel is reframe cultural narratives from a trauma-informed and sociological perspective. So let's get into it. Society punishes honesty, okay? Like it just does. When you start telling the truth, people start getting triggered, people start getting frothy at the mouth because people have some really strong ideas about motherhood in particular. People have really strong ideas about what women should be doing with their lives, what they should be doing with their bodies, what they should be doing with their money. I mean, the list goes on and on. And I want to talk about the difference between mom, the noun, and mom, the verb, okay? Because I have learned through my own experience with my own child that being a mother is both a noun and a verb. And so when people are like, but don't you want to have kids? Don't you want a baby? I don't think that's the right question. I think the real question is, do you want to be a parent? Because that's a different question. Do I want to hold a little life and that's warm and innocent and cuddly and just has their whole life and future ahead of them? Sure. Do I want the laughter and enjoyment of watching them grow up and discover the world and just rediscover the world through their eyes? Sure. But that's mom, the noun. And a lot of times when people think about having children, they are thinking about the noun. They're thinking about the first Christmas and the matching jammies and the vacations to Disney. That is I want to be a mom, the noun. But there's also mom, the verb. And that's the part that women are starting to speak to out loud because mom, the verb is sleepless nights. Mom, the verb is a tremendous amount of emotional sacrifice, financial sacrifice, physical sacrifice. Mom, the verb is 24/7, 365. What's for dinner? Where we going? Where you got to be? What time you got to be there? What permission forms do I need to sign? It is administrative. It is emotional. It is laborious. Period. Okay. That is the work of being a mother. And I think that a lot of times when people think about what they want for their lives, they are thinking specifically in the terms of the noun. I want a husband. I want a wife. But do you want to be a husband? But do you want to be a wife? Because that is a different conversation because the noun requires the verb. And so what a lot of women are coming to truth about is that I love these little lives. I love the memories. I love their personhood. I would take a bullet for them. I would dive on the mat for them. At the same time, the day in, day out, the consistent, what are we having for dinner? If they get sick, all of the things, okay? And not just food, clothing, and shelter. I'm talking about the emotional capacity that is required, okay, to tend to their emotional selves and their spiritual selves and their social selves when they don't make friends, or when you're an introvert and they're an extrovert, and now all of a sudden you have to muster yourself up to go and be in the mom group, in the play group, or go and shake hands at the park, or meet this mom group of moms and that group of parents and that sort of thing. It takes a lot. That is mom, the verb. And it is okay to say that that work isn't glorious. Okay. Like some of you, you might love your career field, your discipline, what you majored in college, but you got to admit that sometimes it's hard to go to that particular job every day because it's like, yeah, just the work involved and what is required of me is a bit much. And I personally, I have one child. And I did the math when she was very early on, like 2 weeks old. I was sitting at home. I was on maternity leave and, rocking and patting and rocking. And I said to myself, I will never do this again, because I knew in that moment, it all crystallized for me that this child, apart from me, could do nothing. Okay. And that if I wanted to go and get my hair done, I needed to make sure she was accounted for. If I wanted to get my nails done, I needed to make sure she was accounted for. If I wanted to go to the shower, if I wanted to go take a shower, I needed to make sure she was accounted for, like that she was secured. And so I had never had that type of responsibility in my life. And it wasn't just the physical caretaking, it was the emotional investment. It was the sacrifices of sleep. It was the sacrifices of finances. And so that was mom, the verb. And I knew that I personally only had the capacity to do that one time. And I think that that is a healthy assessment that a lot of women take, especially those who decide to remain child free. When they have nieces or nephews and they look at their lives and they look at their own capacity and they look at their own finances and they're just like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do this. This isn't me. This isn't what I want for myself. This isn't what I want for my life. And some of us can speak to the other side of the coin about being raised by parents who did not want children, who got stuck with kids. Like, well, that's my duty. That's my obligation. I gave you food, clothing, and shelter, didn't I? Right. So, mom, the noun, is very different than mom, the verb. And it is okay. There's no shame in the game in being and saying, I don't always love the verb. Which brings me to, in this economy, now, I cannot speak for other countries. I can only speak for the yet to be United States. But the United States is really vocal. The legislature is really vocal about making sure that people have children, in part because children is what churns the economic engine. Like they want us to keep creating the laborers, right? To sustain the labor force. At the same time, for all of their vociferousness about women should be having more children, a lot of women do not have automatic paid maternity leave. Okay, they got to figure that out, or they got to take a pay cut. There is no universal health care, and the provisions for Head Start and child care have pretty much all but evaporated. And so when you say, well, I'm not going to have a kid, that's not just a personal choice. That's also an economic choice. That's also recognizing that within the systems and structures that currently exist in this economy, it does not make fiscal sense to take on the expense of raising a child. And show of hands, has anybody ever raised children? I could tell you from experience, even with the one that I have, having a child is the most expensive thing I've ever done. It is the most, by far and away, the most expensive thing I have ever done. Okay. And I don't have any regrets about that. She's had a wonderful life. These are decisions that I made to set her up for success and all the things. At the same time, not everybody has the same privileges. Not only that, people want you to have a child and then they don't want to provide the village. They don't want to provide the support. They want you to have babies, but they don't want to babysit. They don't want to come together and support you. What about when you get sick? What about when you lose a job? What about when the systems and structures of your life fall apart? Because all of us are situationally employed. Okay, many of us are just one or two tragic circumstances away from having a very different life economically. And what then? Okay, what kind of village do we have? What kind of support do we have? And all of that is worthy of consideration when you talk about being a mom, okay, when you talk about having a child, not to mention the fact, and this is just a bonus, this wasn't even in my outline for today's video, but baby, this is something that I learned when I was pregnant, and I said, I will never be pregnant again. Like I kind of knew before she was 2 weeks old, but I remember distinctly having this type of experience, and I was like, oh no, th- I am not built. I don't have the capacity to go through this. And it was when I was pregnant, I did not realize how opinionated people would become about your body and about your baby. Because now all of a sudden, it was, why you doing that? Why are you going here? Why are you, I read something, you shouldn't be drinking that kind of water. You should drink this other kind of water. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm educated. I've read the books. I'm keeping up, I've made it up to this big old age, and I got degrees and I own my own home. And I think I kind of got it from here, although I appreciate your support. And then instead of it just being my baby, the relatives, okay, because this child did not arrive in a vacuum, that's like our relative. And so people started to feel like they had some sense of ownership. Well, who's going to be in the delivery room? And people want to visit the hospital around the clock. And it's like, I don't, if I had not been pregnant, we wouldn't even be having a conversation. Like, I don't even have any sort of relationship with you, any sort of connection or conversation with you outside of the fact that I might be carrying your cousin or I might be carrying, a niece, a nephew, or what have you. But all of a sudden, people that were never really a part of your life all of a sudden feel entitled to it because of this new person that you're carrying. And I was like, okay, this is intrusive. This is, and people just kind of like invite themselves over without any consideration for your sleep, for your rest. They're not coming to cook meals. Okay, so it's not like, that situation where, sometimes women have baby and their mom moves in for a few weeks or a few months, to kind of help out. No, it wasn't that type of situation. It was, I want to see my new niece, nephew, cousin. I want to see my bestie's new baby or that sort of thing. And I was like, what? So that, especially for an introvert, that was very overwhelming. And so when you think about the systems and the sense of entitlement and the lack of economic support and the amount of sacrifice that is required in order to raise a healthy child in this world, I think that saying, there are parts of this that I don't love is okay and should be met with empathy, understanding, compassion. And even if you don't get it, you'd be like, you know what? That hasn't been my experience, but I can't say I understand because I understand that there are more perspectives other than my own. I understand that there are other experiences other than my own. And while some people might love that, they might welcome that the more the merrier. That was not my ministry. I was like, yeah, I don't have the capacity to do this more than once. Does that make sense? Which brings me to point number 3, because the struggle is real. Oh, I didn't even mention the struggle. And then when a woman decides to have a child or multiple children and now inflation, rising costs, have you looked at the price of gas lately? When all of those types of things start to trickle into the budget and start to chip away at the family budget, and now she needs public assistance or SNAP benefits, oh, now you a welfare queen. That's what you get for having all those kids. If you couldn't afford them, then you shouldn't have had them. So you want me to have the kids, but then when I struggle, then I get met with shame. Okay, so welcome to motherhood, okay, especially in the United States. But the third point that I want to make is, let's break up this assumption that all women are this maternal Mother Earth, that as soon as a baby hits the scene, that all of these instincts from our ancestry just kick in and suddenly we are overwhelmed with the sensation to get in the kitchen and start baking brownies and start churning butter and start mending baby booties and that sort of thing. No, that's not the experience for a lot of women, because this brings me back to my original point. A mother is a person, okay? A mother is a person, a father is a person, a pastor, a preacher, a policeman, the surgeon in the hospital room are people. And you know what people have? People have problems. And so don't assume that every swollen belly is a woman who is self-actualized, who has become her best and highest self, that she doesn't have any unhealed wounds or any unresolved traumas, that she is just ready, willing, able to just hop right in there and be the best mom possible. Because baby, that's not true. Okay. The clients that I work with, okay, again, trauma informed perspective, bring their traumas to me and they talk about the mothers who were cold, who were distant, who were emotionally unavailable, who never showed any compassion, any empathy. It was always tough love. And they were just like, well, who never said, I love you. Okay. So this assumption that every mother just comes in with this innate sense of caring and nurturing and desire to want to connect in those ways is not true, because the emotional capacity that is required to be a parent, particularly a mom, okay, I encourage you guys to read Kelly McDaniel's book, Mother Hunger. One of the reasons why people have mother hunger is because of the moms who were physically present, but kind of emotionally checked out. Okay. Especially depending on the nature of the relationship. And so you might have had a mom who was in a bad marriage. You might have had a mom who had baby daddy drama. You might have had a mom, who was trying to figure out her own situation, things that she had not addressed within herself. Because I'm going to tell you this, motherhood and marriage have this dynamic in common. Whatever is not healed will surely be revealed. What you will be exposed. Marriage and motherhood will bring to surface every unresolved hurt, every scar, every wound. It will bring it right to the surface. And if you have not resolved it, if you have not healed it, if you have not addressed it, there it is. And now all of a sudden you have to deal with this within the context of motherhood. And so not every woman that becomes a mom has the capacity to provide children with the emotional nurturing and care. And the assumption is that it's just going to emerge, okay, that it's just going to fall from the sky. We just had Mother's Day. Do you know how many people have complicated relationships with their mothers? How it's kind of strained, how, they try to put the nice post on Instagram, or they try to put the nice post on Facebook, or, love you, mom, or they try to send the roses, but it's forced. It's inauthentic. It's not genuine because the relationship is not there. It's not there. Okay. And the reason why the relationship is not there is because whatever mama did not have resolved in her situation, because mama was a woman with problems. Mama had her own unresolved trauma. And you know what trauma does? Trauma leaves gaps. It leaves gaps in our development. It leaves gaps in our ability to connect in meaningful ways. And so mama did what she could with what she had. And as a result, you got people that have abandonment issues, trust issues, neglect issues, communication issues, all kinds of issues. And so saying the truth, like, you know what, I don't know that I can do this, or I don't think I'm cut out for this, or you know what, I have a propensity towards depression and anxiety, and I know that having a child would just add fuel to an already, blazing inferno. I'm not going to be able to do this. That's okay. That is okay. No judgment. I know women whose moms are pressuring them. So when I'm going to get my grandbaby? So when I'm going to have a grandbaby? When you going to bring me some grandbabies? You might never get those babies, those grandbabies. And that's okay, mom. I know you want it to be a Nana. I know you want it to be a Gigi. I know you want it to be a Grandma. But if that doesn't happen, that's okay. Okay. And you are allowed to have feelings about that. You are allowed to grieve the loss of the life that you thought you were going to have in your later years. And that's okay. But that is a far better outcome than forcing a woman into a situation that she doesn't have the capacity to do well. Okay. Because many of us were parented by people who may have wanted kids, but didn't want to be parents. Okay. And so when you don't do it well, okay, then it leads to a litany of other problems. And so not every woman is maternal, and that is okay too. So to wrap this up, loving your children does not mean loving every part of raising them. Honesty does not mean that you are a failure. And I think that we could do with a little less judgment and a little bit better understanding. Okay, that rather than judging, how about we improve our systems? How about we improve our capacity to be able to take care of children? Like I was just recently watching a young lady who lives in Canada. She had a baby and she showed us her hospital bill. She had a private room and all the things, and her out-of-pocket cost was 170 Canadian dollars. What? The United States could never. The United States could never. Okay. Like just even having a kid is like $1 million enterprise. And so we don't need more pressure. We need better systems. And if we want better outcomes, we need to start telling the truth about what it actually takes to raise them. And I don't say this to discourage anyone. I don't say this to dissuade anyone. I am saying this to validate the experience of moms who are doing the day in, day out, 24/7, 365, who are doing the work and might feel shame because they don't love every part of it. There's no shame in that game. You are doing the best you can, mamacita. Okay, your kids love you down, and it takes more than you ever anticipated that it would, and they are worth the work. They are worth the sacrifice. At the same time, it is okay if that doesn't feel good all the time. And I think that we need to stop lying to moms and aspiring moms and making it seem like it should, okay? Because it's also okay if the entirety of your identity is not wrapped around your children. If you still want to have your own sense of self, to be self-possessed, to have interests and hobbies and goals and dreams and aspirations in addition to being a mom, okay? Because kids are not dream killers. They are pace setters. That's for sure. They will definitely set the pace, but they don't necessarily kill the dream. And so it's okay to be a whole person that includes motherhood rather than that being the sum total of your whole identity and personality. You dig? And so, as always, I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that you found it validating. I hope that you found a sense of empathy and compassion, because I got nothing but love for you. And if you haven't subscribed already, I encourage you to do so. Make sure that you share this with somebody who you believe can use it. And I will see you guys next time.